everybody, and welcome back. It's time for us to move into our second set of the day, which is going to be Snake Pit up against Belt Slap for a very, very important winner semis. Aggro joined here by Mifflin. And Miff, this one's critical, not just because you get to keep your momentum, but because by going into the finals out of the upper bracket, you're going into a best of 5 with a 1-game advantage. So a team like Snake Pit, a team punching up towards Belt Slap, if Belt Slap gets a 1-game advantage on one of these teams, I think it feels pretty inevitable that they'd win that best of 5. If Snake Pit can get the dub, however, it makes their job of winning tomorrow that much easier.
Yeah, I think it is much more impactful if Snake Pit take away this game here, because coming in with the advantage themselves is going to give them that leeway that you brought up a little bit earlier. And I don't think it's completely out of the question. Snake Pit have been looking pretty good this weekend. They came up against the Poppies earlier, who we know are the only team who has ever taken a set off of Belt Slap in this individual league. And there's a ton of talent on this squad. I'm looking at Spudio. I'm looking at Angry. Those are the 2 core members of Snake Pit that I think are going to really shine forward today if they do decide to win. But on the other side, I mean, come on. Belt Slap have been on an absolute warpath since the conception of this team, truthfully. It's going to be hard to stop them.
They've been dominant since day 1 of the SEC here in Season 7. When you look down the roster, it kind of makes sense as to why. You've got boys like Arkhill, Trixtank, Zeros, Johnny, and Julio. This team could compete at the SPL level. They are that talented. There's no doubt about that. But what are the moments that you think they look their weakest is kind of where I want to take it, because they have been so dominant. Have you identified anything that is kind of a trend for when they do start to struggle, even though that's rare?
It is incredibly rare, and it's hard to say that it's when they struggle, because they've got so many avenues to find a win, but it seems like the majority of the time, Belt Slap is a team that is very willing to play through their jungler Johnny. He's allowed to play whatever gods he wants to. He's very comfortable on gods like Kali, Bakasura, Ao Kuang, these more auto-attack-centric characters, which is interesting to say because Johnny, by all rights intended, is the amateur of this squad. I mean, when he's surrounded by players like Zeros, like Arkhill, Trixtank, with these such history past, players that have played on the world stage, it's interesting to point out that he really is the face of this team. But when it isn't him, it usually falls down to Zeros to really pop off. And if it comes down to that, I would say that Zeros is a little bit less consistent than Johnny. If he's the one you're really reliant on, if you're able to ban out Johnny and force Zeros to step up as that hyper carry, I think that might be one avenue in.
Could be the case. And when you were talking about Snake Pit, you mentioned their mid laner, Angry, on the other side. He had a great day yesterday. Really, the whole Snake Pit team had a pretty solid day by my estimation, but Angry in particular looked fantastic.
He really did, constantly finding kills in the back line. He was left alone in the majority of these team fights with the ADC as well, and it's just because they trust him so much. It seems like Snake Pit, at their best, are playing 3 backline divers, leave Spudio, leave Angry to do whatever it is they need to do, and pray that they win their own engagement in the backline, and it's not generally a prayer, because they are so consistent in doing so. I'm just not sure that you're going to allow, or should allow, that opportunity to Belt Slap. If the Belt Slap's allowed to make it their way into your backline, they're going to make much less mistakes compared to the majority of the other SOC/SCC teams. I think they're going to have to tighten up their team fight phase.
That's going to be a key against Belt Slap for sure, and I think their early game is going to be really critical here as well, Miff, because Belt Slap, for my money, has these early games that aren't exactly impressive sometimes. They really rely on making big comebacks later on, which they often do, to win their sets. If Snake Pit can put some extra emphasis on that early game in the drafting phase and in their execution, then we can see a Snake Pit victory today. Let's not wait no longer and find out what they're going to go with in the P's and B's for game number 1. Belt Slap, the team to beat in this region, as they have been basically all year, and they are in the first pick position. And Mifflin, I hope that we are going to see a team pick Yemoja when she's actually let through, because Europe as a region seems to really favor auto-attack assassins, thanks Johnny, and not value Yemoja that highly. She wasn't picked or banned in that whole last set.
Yeah, I mean, in the last game in particular, not a single pick, not a single ban, 10 gods banned out, 10 gods picked. She doesn't even get a single look in her direction. I think it's interesting. And the meta has evolved from there. Nemesis has been getting addressed a little bit in some of these bans. Sometimes she's let through completely as well. Amaterasu makes it through a ton of the time. Cthulhu. It seems like, really, truthfully, the SEC and SOC, as Lermy so eloquently put earlier on the desk, doesn't care about what the SPL is doing. They're going to play whatever they're best at. And I think in this one isolated environment, that might just be the best way forward. I mean, you and I can pray all we want to see Yamoja, but I don't think it really matters to these guys. I mean, we were praying yesterday for a Cupid or a Rama pick, and it seems like Uller was one of the most contested ADCs in the league. It's so hard to lock down what each one of these individual teams is going to do on the day of.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's just kind of, you got to make adjustments based on the meta, not based on what other teams are doing. If you know that the enemy team doesn't play Yamoja that well, why ban it? You know, you're not really forced to, so it does make some sense. But the big winner so far has been Kali. Believe she's 100% win-loss, if my memory serves properly, in Europe so far across these 2 days. So she is not banned quite yet. Snake Pit have the opportunity to get that ban in right now, but they decide to ban the Ama. I'd be a little surprised if Belt Slap went anywhere but that Kali, unless Trix does have a Yamoja that they can rock, because... But even at that point, why would you pick Yamoja? Because no other team is. So I feel like Kali is the natural first pick here.
And you're going to have to eat those words, Aggro. God, I love it when you're wrong.
Hey,
Rama getting locked in absolutely first.
Let's get this clear, Mifflin. I am not wrong. They just went a different direction, okay? I think I'm still right that Kali is the best first pick if this is the meta that we've seen. But they decided to go a different direction. Okay, continue with your point. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean... Rom first pick overall. I think when Cupid's available as well, it doesn't really matter. Finch highlighted it early. Jingwei got picked. I don't care about Cupid anymore. Kali likely going to come through here for Snake Pit because we have seen that priority focus. And I'm with you on it, man. She's got that 100% win-loss here. I'm really hesitant. And Geb got locked in. Hindu, man. This script, man. What are you doing, bro?
Oh, Mifflin, boy, do I love it when you are wrong, man. We're just sitting here rooting against each other. See, Miff, I've been doing this a little bit longer than you. Let me help. I don't say I expect it to be locked in. I say I think it's the best lock-in. So that way I'm not wrong whenever they go with the ROM. It's just a little bit of a wording choice. You know, a little casting lesson as live on the desk.
Appreciate it.
Kind of as we go. Ganesha there for Trix Tank, and the Kali pick by Johnny still is rocking that 100% win rate. But no Yamoja, again, for either of these support players. Trix Tank, in his defense, has looked phenomenal on this Ganesh pick so far.
And it's not like their drafts are necessarily bad. Each one of these individual pieces should be able to work out incredibly well with each other. The duo lane is going to be able to play incredibly safe for the Snake Pit. Jingwei, one of the safest hunters in the game. With airstrike, it's going to be very hard to find those kills. Even with the gank, Kali doesn't have the best gap close potential on a Jingwei. And even if she does, Geb Shield should be able to immune that stun out for Jingwei or for himself. There's a ton of backline peel here. Robin should help you out with that early game, considering duo lane has already forfeited all pressure. With the 2 picks that they've taken so far, Robin should be that bastion of pressure for them everywhere on the map, assuming it is going into the jungle. Whereas Belt Slapper kind of playing Belt Slap's game. Rom, one of the best hunters in the league right now, can't sing his praises enough. The auto attack stems, the ultimate, so hugely impactful. The cripple is going to be a huge determining factor in every single 1v1 trade we see him take with Jingwei. As you said, Trix Tank looks incredibly good on this Nesher. The damage, the defense shred once they get to the objectives. Kali being that gap close god, going to have the assistance of Ganesh closing the gap to the backline as well. I think both teams have strong drafts, but Belt Slap may have just come out ahead.
Interesting, the Belt Slap are the ones to ban away the Morrigan. The Zeros is on their team, and he's the premier Morrigan player in the entire world for my money, so I'm a little bit surprised that we see Belt Slap be the ones to take that away, as well as the Olarun. 2 picks that you can play in the mid lane. Olarun a little bit more ADC focus, but it seems like Snake Pit would have had to put that in mid unless they wanted to run the Dardes special with the Jingwei mid this time around. So Snake Pit has their priority. Mid lane still required for both teams, and solo lane still required for both teams. Julio's had a lot of his picks taken away already, Miff. Tyr and Sun Wukong clearly aimed at the short laner here for Belt Slap, but it's going to be Merlin for Snake Pit. You think he's the best mage available for this composition? Do you like the Merlin?
I would have liked something that has a little bit more fight potential, something that can get involved. You want something that isn't going to have to be reliant on the peel from Geb if you're going to have that really allocated towards the Jingwei. I would have liked to see him pick pressure as well, just to synergize a little bit more so with the Robin. Maybe something like a Habois or even a Hell, or something that is going to put that late game timer on the enemy team. With Belt Slap's current draft and Zero's entire God pool, and that's not true, he plays everything. I was going to say he's going to lock in Aphrodite to synergize with that Kali. I meant to say Hera, because, again, he's going to have backline peel for himself. Argus, that Bubble Buddy, the huge damage potential. But it's going to have a little bit of a harder time matching up into this Robin. Hera is going to be so reliant on her ultimate not only to be a huge source of damage, but also that knock-up to peel for herself. It's going to be easy to immune it out. If you're Robin, overhead kick, just keep holding W, press 2, you're still in there.
And Vamana is the pick for Julio. First time we've seen Vamana this weekend. I think it's okay here. Don't really love it against the backline of the Snake Pit, but also kind of hard for their backline to kill the Vamana. Merlin really likes having people standing still for his damage. Vamana's not going to do that, so it feels like a pretty good pick in that regard as Yorm rounds out the draft for the Snake Pit. This draft feels a little like 2019, right? A little 2000, like a season 6 sort of draft. Yorm, Merlin, Geb in a meta where you could afford to pick Geb. I'm just a little bit worried about that duo lane Jingwei Geb getting really, really bullied here, Miff. Do you share that worry?
I absolutely do. I mean, pressure from Ganesha alone would have been enough to push in what they have there. Match it up with a Rom, he's going to be auto-attacking the entire wave. I don't think there's going to be a single point where Snake Pit aren't locked inside their tier 1 tower in the early game. It's going to be up to this Robin to, really make use of that positioning. If Belt Slap are going to make use of that pressure and sit on that tower, that's just one gank avenue for Robin to really work his way in there. But he doesn't have the follow-up. I mean, it's a Geb and a Jingwei. It's going to be completely down to Robin to do it all himself. I might not even rotate over there just because I want to have someone that's able to fight with me. Whereas Belt Slap have these late-game timers. This Kali makes it to 25 minutes. No individual member of Snake Pit can match up.
Miff, I know you're not heading over to the duo lane. Don't even pretend that you would. Game 1 coming. Johnny's Kali 100% win rate in the balance. Let's see if she keeps it.
Well, if there's anybody who's going to be able to keep that Kali 100% win rate, it would be Johnny over here for Belt Slap. J-Mac and Gormizer on the cast this time, bringing you the action for the winner's side of the EUSCC, or the circuit playoffs.
And I'm excited to see what Belt Slap have to offer. The same thing for Snake Pit, and this is not historically gone well for Snake Pit overall this year. And I was actually, that correction I had yesterday, I kept saying Belt Slap hadn't lost a set. They've lost one to the Poppies last playoffs. It was in the same position, though, so maybe a good spot for Snake Pit to kind of show up and surprise us by taking them down. Unfortunately, Johnny's on a signature pick. Trix Tank is on a signature pick. Arkle's on a signature pick. 3 things at least that you're maybe uncomfortable with if you load in and see Belt Slap have all been able to pick up.
I think for me, I'm looking a lot at Angry, but right now, Belt Slap is looking at this purple buff from Snake Pit. Going to put a lot of pressure onto Dazer and Spudio, get them down to lose about a quarter of their health each, but Trix Tank got left alone here. Not sure if Spudio's going to try and turn to do anything about this. He's going to head towards the wave and just let the supports deal with each other. Arkle taking quite a bit of poke from the basic attacks out of Spudio.
But the way Arkle holds it, he takes not only some of the basic attacks, but some of the minion aggro. But look how much control and pressure they have in this lane already, right? Instead of holding the minions to meet in the middle and making sure everybody has the same amount of potential, he holds them just outside the tower. And even though, it costs him a little bit of his own health, he's now able to maintain that pressure, move forward, strip some experience away from Snake Pit. This is just Belt Slap doing what Belt Slap do best, which is making you play a worse version of your own game. It's not going to completely set off Snake Pit, but it's going to be enough that now they're a little bit behind. That small advantage you have in the support, specifically for Trix Tank, I think opens up a big conversation when it comes to the rotations. He'll be, now level 2 before Dazer, but then level 3 before Dazer, level 5 before Dazer. And as long as they keep up this pace, I expect to see this Ganesha have a much bigger impact overall in the game.
You saw by the poll there, quite a lot of faith in Belt Slap. 84% of the audience thinking that Belt Slap is going to take the win in this first game. And I mean, with, like you said, with the picks that they've gotten here, a Johnny special, a Zero special, Arkle special, Trix Tank special, I mean, these four players, I would even say that Julio's Vamana is well within his range, but we know him obviously more for the Wukong, for the tier. I mean, Beltslap got just about everything that they wanted here, and looking over towards Snake Pit's side, I can really only say that Angry kind of got his go-to pick. Merlin has been his default god for the majority of the phase, and the one thing that so many teams have kind of failed to do against Snake Pit that I don't think Beltslap is going to fall into the same degree is teams just let Angry free cast in the backline. If Beltslap can shut down Angry early, it's going to be a wild ride here for Snake Pit going in this game.
Yeah, I just need to see how they're going to be able to maintain this. You know, go into a late game versus a Kali that has a 100% win rate right now across Europe these last couple of days, and that's a little scary. But you're also having to deal with pressure, maybe even not from Johnny. I think it's so easy to talk about Johnny because of what he's always been able to do. But, you highlight the mid lane. We keep looking towards Angry and Worst Turtle, and Angry has had some phenomenal games, but Zeros is, in my mind, the best mid laner in Europe right now, and honestly, one of those players that I'm surprised to see still just kind of hanging out down here, although I guess there's a lot of things that would change between him and maybe jumping into the Pro League, but one of the best Morgan players we have, one of the best, just insert mid lane god here players. And I think this Hera, even though it's maybe easier to ignore, is still going to end up being this kind of menace once she gets Argus online.
It really is hard to compete with the level of that is Zeros on this Beltslap. Like you said, I'm in wholehearted agreement. I feel that Zeros is the best mid laner that the EU amateur scene has to offer right now. And it's so difficult to ban this guy out. It's difficult to really figure out what he wants to pick because his god pool is so vast compared to so many other players. I mean, you get to Angry, you got maybe 2 or 3 gods that he's just going to go to. Merlin is kind of just, as I said, his number one go-to pick. Okay, well, I guess I'll just kind of slot this Merlin into here. But yeah, Zeros doesn't really have that same factor. He has all different areas that he can jump into.
I will say, though, like you were saying, Angry, even if it's just a comfort pick, Merlin, one of the best Divine Ruin applicators, and I think that's going to be coming in a lot of handy for him when Julio starts making those rotations. We've seen what Julio can do on things like the tier and how early the rotations will start to come from that solo lane. Vamana, if you're able to deal with the healing, he becomes a lot more manageable, and so I expect to see a Curse Donk a little bit later and a little bit more itemization to deal specifically with that ultimate. But, you get a little bit of trickle down, right? Like, yes, it's to kill Julio, but at the same time, it'll stop Johnny if he gets his target kill from getting all of that healing as well. So I want to see Snake Pit start to itemize into that. I expect it for Angry because it's just one of the best items to grab early on a Merlin. But, Divine Ruin, you get a Brawlers, potentially something like a Contagion or a Pestilence a little bit later, just to have all the items covered. And then whether you're Dazer or Terrorum, either way, somebody gets a Curse Donk, and you're going to be smooth sailing into those late game team fights.
Divine Ruin, Brawlers. Gore, I'm not sure I'm familiar with those items. I don't get to see those too often in the games that I play. There's 4 or 5 healers up against, and I say, anti-heal, and they go, what? What's that? It's not an item that is seen too familiar, even at some of the lower end, and occasionally even at the upper end of play. It just feels like they don't pick it up. But like you said, Merlin probably one of the best mages in the game to apply that anti-heal. And who else? I mean, who's going to be the number 1 and 2 people diving onto Angry? It's going to be Julio and Johnny, the best people to apply that to.
Yeah, ideally it's something that keeps him safe. The only, I think, biggest downside will be the burst. Merlin has a lot of tick damage, and so it's not all going to come at once, which Kali and Julio are more than happy to withstand. I mean, Kali ult is going to be able to shrug off your damage like it's nothing because she won't die. And Julio, when he's in his ult, even if you have a Divine Ruin, you're not going to be able to really kill him by yourself. So Angry's still going to have a little bit of help. But it's less about his own personal 100 to 0 potential and more about how long can I stay alive in these fights. And survivability, especially as a mage in the mid lane, is probably your biggest thing. You're up against one of the toughest to deal with junglers in Europe right now, and I would even argue in the challenger circuit as a whole in Johnny. So you need something more.
Oh, Dharmic Pillars drop down, but Worst Turtle gonna use that Mystic Rush to get out immediately. So an ult for ult trade hopefully stays, say, in favor of Worst Turtle onto that one. Dharmic Pillar, pretty big team fight ultimate to have there. Arco losing out the boxing match along with Spudio, and that's going to warrant a rotation from both teams towards the left-hand side. just to make sure the fighting doesn't keep going through. Instead, they'll just grab their mid camps and head back to base, get some items online. We can already see the boots online for both mid laners. Cooldown boots on the Merlin versus the more damage-oriented boots for Zeros.
Yeah, I think Zeros just wants to hit a little harder right now. And I do think it's also going to benefit overall. I think you're looking at, his itemization. Again, not only survivability for Hera, but burst ability that's going to come through. Because when you think about it, like, the polymorph is great, your shield is great. You're trying to smack people down with the fists, and you're hoping Argus has a lot to carry on for you, right? So, for the most part, I'm not too surprised by this. Merlin as well, making sure that he has his cooldown available as much as possible. Both of them playing into their playstyles. I think for Zeros, this is going to work a little bit better just for the team overall as well, because you've already seen one. Now I can talk about how Dharmic Pillars is the best ability in Smite in my eyes, because it does so much, so well for your team. And I expect to see the combo between an Argus Dharmic Pillars it's going to be nuts. I mean, imagine you are either locked in this box, or you're slowed and your protections were reduced because you decided to leave the box. Also, there's a lot of damage that you took just on initial hit, leaving the Dharmic Pillars, and Argus is chasing you. You're slowed, he's going to be able to catch up no problem, your protections are shredded, so he's punching you even harder. I just like the combination between the support and the mid lane here.
Blink Cataclysm out of Dazer will get the beads from Johnny. Very quick reaction time at him to make sure nothing further comes to there. So once again, another Blink ult trade out here. No ultimate out of Johnny, but beads most important. Taking off this Gary, and he really does need that. Typically, you do see the blink from really both these youngers. They love that blink, but Johnny going into the beads very early because, I mean, look what you're going up against. A Jeb, a Jormungandr, you gotta have those beads.
I think there's just enough CC on the other side, and like even Trickstank has beads, right? They recognize that there is a serious threat of roots, of knockbacks, of some sort of control coming from Snakebit. And I like that. I love when the teams are respectful enough. Like, even though Belt Slap has had no issues dealing with Snakebit for a majority of this year, I think won every single set they've played against this team, they're still having to give that respect where Johnny can't just lock in beads because, Kali go brr and press W, right? He has to hold on a little bit and still keep himself alive through this early game. Although we're starting to see some earlier aggression from Kali. We saw it last set, and I'm wondering if they're willing to go in here.
Julio's taking quite a bit of poker from Tarim. Had 3 stacks of that vapor around him in order to get that bellowing roar to its maximum value. And while it didn't do a whole lot of damage after the return fire alongside of Worst Turtle, putting down to about half, mid-camps will go the way of the Snake Pit, and it's a very slow starting game, but Snake Pit has surmounted a small little 500 gold lead, just a little bit more efficient farming out of the boys in red.
It's impressive, honestly. It's not often you get to say that against Belt Slap someone's been farming better than them, right? That is almost a rarity in and of itself. And I do think it comes down to, well, right now it's been the mid lane. I think that's big. There's a level difference there. In the jungle as well. Solo lane as well. It's everywhere but the duo that seems to be falling. Just a smidge behind. And Johnny, you expect him to just be farming. I think he's actually looked for more fights than I would have expected out of any Kali this early on. And in Julio, I think it really just comes down to the fact that you're Vamana. There's only so much you can do.
Oh, Arco's going to have to go right into the sky. Worst Turtle and Spudio collapsing and make that a third. He's got some support on the bottom end for whenever he lands, but is that going to be enough for it? No, as the Argus and the Mystic Rush drop down simultaneously. They manage to trade out 1-for-1 as Johnny picks up Worst Turtle. And Dazer just going to roll out to try and close out the gap, but misses Trickstank on the return, trying to signal him out. It's going to be a 1-for-1, getting first blood onto Arco. Big for Belt Slap.
I think it's the question of, where you want it. Getting first blood onto Arkle, really, really solid for you, getting that kill early on. But also, I think shutting down Worst Turtle, he's had just a little lead over Johnny. He's going to be dead for a little bit. That's time for Johnny to play catch-up. You can already see him going into the jungle. I also think it's interesting because I was looking for Julio throughout that entire fight, thinking, man, if he rotates in here, Trickstank has Dharmic Pillars. This is not only a fight they could win, they could turn this around still. And he was in mid lane proxying the wave. I like the way they read that, because as much as it seems like maybe you lose this fight, you get back the farm, which is where they've been falling apart so far, and they're still behind by the same amount they were, about 1,000 overall, maybe 900 as it varies wave to wave. But those are the little plays that are going to make those small level differences between, Tarum and Julio or Worst Turtle and Johnny just completely disappear. And as long as you're on par experience-wise, the gold will catch up eventually.
I just looked over into the inventory of Mr. Julio here that we've been talking so much about. Emerald Talisman as a first item after his boots. Now, I've seen Emerald Talisman plenty of times in late game when you're sieging Phoenixes. You want to get that extra pressure. I've even seen it, in other game modes where you're constantly around minions all the time. But picking it up second item here?
Yeah, it's well, let's just go ahead and run back. Looking at the passive of what he's bringing in, right? Getting a killer assist hasn't really been happening already, so it's already starting off with a big pause. But it's going to cause you and your allies to get movement speed, attack speed, and MP5. Like you said, it's really good in the late game, but I feel like this was specifically good magical protection against a Jormungandr, good health early on for a Vamana, and it's going to allow him to feel more free-flowing, the Talisman of Energy, into these team fights, which we've already seen. Julio likes to rotate early. It's 12 minutes in. We've seen both of the solo laners leave their lane, leave their island, and come on over. You add this with the health and everything you're getting from, like, Breastplate of Valor, and I think it's just a weird but good medium ground for tankiness. Because as much as I like to build magical protections, there's not a ton that immediately scream like the best solo lane tank items when you're up against a Guardian. So I like this pickup for Julio, even if it is maybe a little early in the build.
Yeah, you can never go wrong with a little bit more attack speed on, the four-arm chainsaw that is Johnny's Kali, as well as Arkle piloting that Rum. Again, another attempt to steal this blue buff by Tarum. He's been at this buff consistently off cooldown, just to try and get either vision onto it, try to steal it away, but you can tell that this is where a lot of their focus is to try and keep Julio down, but so far Tarum has been unsuccessful on stealing that buff away.
Yeah, again, it feels like they're trying to put pressure where what feels like the Link would be here, which is Julio. Try to take him down, try to make him uncomfortable, and theoretically you open up at least that side of the map, but Julio, again, just doesn't seem to care. I think this is his level of playstyle where there's a certain point where you can make him uncomfortable, you can make him in a losing matchup, you identify him as a weak link, and he's still not going to give you a lot of pressure over there because the way he plays is just too aggressive. It's difficult to deal with when he's on aggressive gods, but here, even on the Vamana, there's not much you can do to stop him.
He went up to proxy the wave. We saw Tarum start making a rotation towards mid. It looked like Gold Fury may have been in their sights for just a moment, but quick turnarounds by Beltslap make sure that Snake Pit cannot go for that objective this early on, and with everybody going back to base on the side of Snake Pit, that's just going to leave Dazer here all alone up by this objective. Johnny going to push forward and take a ward down by the purple buff so he can get that vision control on that side. Not sure if Zeros is actually able to confirm and keep that back camp away, but Tarum just getting a little bit of proxy farm of his own by taking that enemy back harpy camp.
I like the aggressiveness, I think, from both sides. It is that idea from Snake Pit, though, of just hinting at a Gold Fury a couple minutes ago, that is making me start to lean a little more in their favor, although ward coverage, Belt Slap showing they're not afraid of the Gold Fury Pit. I just think you can tell that Snake Pit are hungry to get something else, right? They don't just want fights, they want to continue this lead, which at this point they've almost cultivated up to 2,000. That's incredible on its own. Not a lot of kills, 1,500 gold, again fluctuating between wave and wave. This Gold Fury is either going to tie things up for Belt Slap and make Snake Pit's game a nightmare, or it's going to get them enough of a lead that they could still feasibly take this game.
Well, they're definitely not going to be able to take this Gold Fury quietly, especially with Trix Tank around on that Ganesh. Dharma Pillar, a great ability for shredding down the objective and really just causing a commotion in the midst of the team fight. You get one person without a leap stuck inside there, Dazer or Tarum gets stuck inside the Dharma Pillars. Tarum's going to have to ult to get himself out safely without taking a ton of damage. And, well, Dazer, he just kind of has to sit there for quite some time or choose to walk out angry. He has to choose to use his purification beads as he gets hit by the remove obstacles out of Trix Tank. Make sure he doesn't get thrown up and take too much damage.
I'm actually surprised. Well, I'm simultaneously surprised and not surprised. I feel like Belt Slap are more willing to fight. Then I do remember also it's Europe, so it's going to be a little slower. And then Johnny, if you could give a Kali, and you know, Cherio does this in the Pro League all the time, it's not something that's really foreign to Kali players. If you just let them sit back and farm for 20 minutes, they're not upset. They're happy. And you get that one kill already on your belt, and yeah, maybe you're a little bit behind Worst Turtle still. But when it comes to teamfight impact later on, you know you're going to be the one that is absolutely driving the force forward.
It's going to be an immediate leap in, followed by Johnny. And he's got that destruction in case he needs it. Diving into that tower, will use it. And Arca will clean up the kill with the shots from the sky. But a quick rotation in from Dazer and Worsterl trying to find Johnny. Gonna go with the Mystic Rush over the top, but Worsterl can't close the gap. He's already used his blink, running as fast as he can. Manages to find the root, but the turnaround stun out of Johnny is gonna clean up Worsterl in the tower. The Crusher damage is enough to clean up and trade a 1-for-1, but Dazer falls to zeros in the backline, making this a 3-for-1 exchange, and it might be a 4th as Julio is diving the tier 1 tower. Angry is left all alone. And with the Ohm out of Trixie, making sure he has nothing left to go. 4 wiped off the face of the earth by Beltslap, and that opens up for the Gold Fury.
So this is going to be a real deep dig for our audience, but if you've ever seen, it's an old show, but Chappelle's Show, there's a skit that they like to do called When Keeping It Real Goes Wrong, and that is a perfect example. Snake Pit tried to come over, try to do whatever they can just to match what Johnny is doing in terms of pressure, and he just kills Spuddy. Like, at the end of the day, losing your carry, it sucks, but it's not the worst thing in the world for you. But unfortunately, I think the over-aggression from Worst Turtle, again, kind of splits the fight in two, and Snake Pit just end up in 2 unfortunate scenarios. Johnny able to turn 1 around under the tower, and then the rest of the team able to gobble up what's left of Snake Pit. Now you get that Gold Fury, and all of that lead we were talking about before, and most wonderfully showcased by the charts here, completely gone and now in favor of Beltslap just in one fell swoop, and not at the timing you want. I mean, holding on to a lead for 15 minutes is impressive, but losing it around the 16, 17, 18-minute mark is really the worst-case scenario for you, because that's where the entire pace of the game changes. Every objective is now going to be team fight oriented. It's a 3v3 minimum, maybe a 5v5 total when these rotations are coming through. Your solo laners are more in this. And so now you're getting into this team portion of the game, and that's where Beltslap excel. Now they have control of the lead. They're going to be able to dictate everything Snake Pit do.
Up until that point, they were in what I like to call their best worst-case scenario, which is we're out-farming Beltslap. Yes, we have this lead. It's 15 minutes. We've been staying ahead of them this whole time without having to fight them. The problem is, and here's where the worst case comes through, it is there's a Kali on the enemy team we haven't done anything with yet. No one's tried to stop her farm, so yeah, we're farming, but so is Kali.
Yeah, and happily, right? I mean, at this point, you've got just, you know, Johnny happy to be farming up and getting items online, but now he's got 2 kills under his belt as well. One from earlier, splits an assist there with Arkle, but gets a 2nd kill onto his opposing jungler. It just makes it so much easier to jump in.
And Worst Turtle has about half of his health done as the Mystic Rush back into the back carpet camps. Arkle up in the sky, just throwing a few shots out to see if he can find anybody. Dharma Killer's dropped, and Dazer is going to be slowed down, chased out by Julio. With the Shield of Thorns pop, he's going to make sure the carries don't really try and return much fire back to him. Curse still available for Dazer if he needs it in the next fight, just in case Johnny or Julio try and get a little too aggressive. They jump up the Fire Giant, they go towards the Pyromancer, and that one will go cleanly to Beltslap. Julio's still playing up at the front line. That'll be a retreat from the boys in blue.
A lot of ults used by Beltslap there that didn't really afford them a whole ton. I mean, even the Thorns used by Julio. Most of the relics got to be held onto by both squads, but it felt a little missed by Beltslap as they got so aggressive, I think, trying to create space for that Fire Giant, and I think maybe even surprised that they weren't able to get as much off of it as they wanted. Pyromancer is still going to be great for them, and again, at this point, when you're just pulling a lead back in your favor, anything and everything you can take is worthwhile. But it did feel like they expected more out of everything. Maybe not quite as much damage from Julio as you would think. And honestly, looking at his build, it's just because he doesn't really have anything. I think that Sledge can help out, but 2 big health and protection items, then attack speed boots, hasten katana, not a lot of power to chase him down. And so while he's distracting, I don't know that Julio has quite yet hit that nuisance portion of Vamana. So you're relying on Johnny to get back there, Zeros to get back there, and they didn't seem to want to get too aggressive just then. Now that all the ults are back for Beltslap, I'm not surprised that, one, they're already dancing around here near the Fire Giant pit, but two, to maybe see them get aggressive again. If Julio wants to go in and fight, he will.
TrixTank and Julio once again pushing up into the front line to try and create some space for this Fire Giant. Beltslap's not going to be able to do that very easily. They don't really have the best secure with a Hera and a ROM. It's going to be a lot of just gradual damage that goes through. I mean, sure, you can drop Argus directly onto the Fire Giant to try and secure, but I mean, is it really worth dropping Argus and losing the potential knockup for the fight, or having him all throughout the Fire Giant to really put that kind of burst damage down? Only time will tell is, once again, Beltslap start eyeing up the Fire Giants. Gonna throw a little bit of damage onto his TrixTank. Rolling in is Arkle. Dazer left all alone, and he's just caught in the middle of 4 players. Argus down out of zeros, and that'll be the end of the life of the support. Tear him up into the World Serpent, looking for anybody, but Arkle's gonna go to the sky to make sure he stays out of danger. And Angry taking so much damage from Arkle's snipes into the sky. He's got to be unfortunate, but Johnny's in with the destruction, looking for one. Not going to get the reset, and gets poked down by the Blizzard out of anger, but Julio managed to pick him up in the back line. Double kill for him, but Arkle finds Spudio. That's going to be almost a deicide, as Terran was the only one who managed to find a way out. And all that Beltslap lost was Johnny.
Look, it's still a great fight for Beltslap, so don't take this wrong. But shame on you, Julio. You took your Kali's target right as they were about to get the hit. I mean, Johnny would have healed up. He would have been alive, and they would have kept going. It was insane how much they could have done that admittedly would have still been better for them. That being said, this is not the worst-case scenario. 4 people with Fire Giant chasing down now. What I'm going to go ahead and call is a mostly dead Jormungandr. He's not going to be able to make it out of this one with no ult.
Well, he does have Dazer coming through. He's got the shield on top. He'll be able to turn around and get Arkle.
No way.
Julio putting some damage onto him. The target has switched over to Terra. Julio is just going to keep chasing that. He's got that Hasten Katana. But just that one shield out of Dazer is all it took for Terram to live through that fight. Dazer's still pushing forward. They're not going to be able to get anything more off of this. Julio and TrixTank well and safe.
All right, never mind. I go back to what I was saying. Shame on you. If Johnny was alive there, Terram dies. If he has Fire Giant, I think things are looking a little better. That's just unfortunate. I mean, more than anything. Arkle going down, losing his buff. I think having it on Julio and TrixTank is still going to be helpful, but now looking down there, you've got the Divine Ruin, you've got that Cursed Ankh. Not a whole lot of anti-heal that has been picked up all around, although I believe there's a Toxic Blade down there as well. So a little bit thrown out through Snake Pick to help deal with Julio. That's going to help deal with Johnny simultaneously. But I do think that you have that sustain on the 2 targets that maybe need it the most on Beltslap. Unfortunately, you might not have the same tower shred potential from Arkle. But with his build, I don't think he's going to be too worried about burning through some towers as well. So I think you're not necessarily at a net loss. You still have a benefit of this buff. It's just how well they can use it with only 3 members maintaining it.
I'm honestly really curious how many stacks of Silver Branch Bow he's going to get, not just from his current build, but when he pops his stem as well. That extra bit of attack speed he's going to gain is going to further increase his damage when that Silver Branch starts coming online here. And looking over towards this left-hand tower, only tier 2s left as the mid one falls to Julio. Team of Beltslap starting to group up. Johnny's going to have to leap away from Dazer. 4 start grouping towards the left-hand side out of Beltslap. Almost everybody from Snake Pit, only the jungler sticking around, trying to keep eyes on Julio to make sure that he can't push down the mid-tier 2. Johnny makes a rotation over, so they'll keep it jungle for jungle at the mid lane. But Julio's going straight into the back line all alone. Nobody is even really paying much mind to him as he's just walked up. Only Terram there to really kind of put any sort of pressure onto this mana.
That's a sentence that's not too surprising to hear from Julio, and it puts him in a perfect position for this fight.
Dharmic Pillar is going to be dropped, and Julio down to a quarter health. The Cursed Ankh has been popped as well, and he's still just sticking to the tower while everybody else is trying to retreat through. Tower's still standing. Terram has to use the last tick of the World Serpent to get out, and tier 2 tower will fall. Not expending too much and not committing too hard. A smart call from Snake Pit. You don't want to hold on to that tower, especially still into even just 3 players of the Fire Giant.
I mean, hey, you get 1 tier 2 already. You're starting to look at net positives. The Fire Giant's only around for another minute, though. And it's just that lack. Not having it on Kali, not having it on Arkle makes it difficult to push into these tier 2s. I still don't think that Snake Pit could easily defend them. I think they're definitely at the disadvantage for it. But you're not so easily going to take them as Beltslap that you can just walk up to them and Snake Pit have to fall back. So I kind of like what they're doing now. Get the Pyromancer, grab our own buffs, back to base, spend some of the gold we have from the, doing the Fury, now this tier 2, and just play it, safe. Relax going through. Almost 3,000 gold in hand there for Johnny when he backed, and now he's got some protection online, a lot of the attack speed. I anticipate these next couple of fights being much more readily in his favor, much more difficult to peel away this Kali. So Snake Pit are going to have a lot of work cut out just dealing with Johnny alone. Then you add in Julio, who's also jumping into the backline, Zeros, who's dropping Argus on top of you. I think it makes it a little more difficult as a whole to deal with Belt Slap now. And Fire Giant's up in a minute, so they're going to continue trying to force some issues, and they're doing a lot of damage to a tower even without the buff.
Not sure if they're going to be able to fully get this one here, though. Argus dropped down. Dazer down to a quarter health. Forced to use the shield on himself. World Serpent out of Terran to get a little bit of zone control. Tier 2 tower will fall, but Arco finds the snipe onto Dazer. One falls as well as the Tier 2 tower. The mid lane is where the junglers will go to, but everybody else on Belt Slap starting to group back up towards the Fire Giant as it's set to respawn in just 30 seconds. Trixtank going to go back and heal up, as well as Arkle, as he's down to about half health himself during the fight.
And it seems like, yeah, the full back for everybody here on Belt Slap, but they still got Pyromancer going for them, so they're going to be able to get back into the engagement fast enough. Johnny just kind of chilling overall, still farming up the way that you, I guess, just want to. If you're Kali, I think it goes hand in hand, that you're just going to get your mind into a farming mindset, and you'll be perfectly happy with it. But now, I don't know, I'm starting to feel a little more shaky for Snake Pit. I look towards Robin, and admittedly, I think he's one of the best ones to try and send over here. Maybe Jingwei as well to steal a Fire Giant away. And as much as I love seeing the steals, it doesn't seem like anybody on Snake Pit is really poised to do so. So already kind of resigning themselves to come back and just defend. Dazer's going to be way too late, same thing for Terror Realm. So Belt Slap, at least that Tier 2 tower is going to go down like it's nothing, but I'm starting to smell a Phoenix as well.
Yeah, this is starting to become dangerous territory for the Snake Pit, as they now have to defend against two Phoenixes. One on the right side, one on the left is open as well, but they got minions pushed all the way to the Tier 2 for Belt Slap side on that dual lane. So it's going to be a while before they can make a safe engagement onto it, and since it's not the enhanced Fire Giant, they'll get those backdoor protection shreds. They're going to have to do that one kind of on a half a leg there. Looking towards this right side, they do have the minions available to it. Trixtank's ultimate is back up, and that's kind of been their key to start the fights, is once the pillar drops down, that's been the go call out of Belt Slap. We'll see if they follow suit here. Johnny going to make a rotation over. Darling Pillar's down out of Trixtank. Spudio's going to have to run away, but the snipes from Arkle are just too good. He takes down Spudio. Taram wants to get into the World Serpent, going into the backline. Arkle taking a lot of damage between Worst Turtle and the World Serpent. Worst Turtle finds Arkle, but Johnny's going to grab Angry in the backline. Taram going to get stopped in his tracks by Trixtank. Still trying to take down the carry, but Zeros with that shield is living, but the Bellowing Roar, too much damage. The mid laner falls. Taram may have just single-handedly saved that Phoenix by taking out both of the major carries.
He slows down what Belt Slap are able to do, but I don't think he's going to be able to save this. Honestly, he could still even run down for the game right here. I mean, there's only two people defending, and this Kali is tearing through health bars.
Make that one person. Dazer is gone. Worst Turtle the only one to defend, but at a quarter health for almost everybody but Johnny.
Oh, yeah, it's difficult.
Phoenix looks like it might just be all that they grab here. But Taram, perfect defense out of this Jormungandr, just not enough help in the backline. He was able to keep those carries down, but nobody was there to help his. And now looking towards this mid lane Phoenix, Trixtank gonna drop the ultimate one more time at a blink in from Johnny, and that's gonna be another kill for the Kali, and might just be another Phoenix as well. Only Spudio is here. He's gonna throw a few basics out, but nothing's gonna save the life of this bird.
I just love the way that Johnny is playing this. I mean, even though you lose Arkle and Zeros in that fight, maybe Johnny could have, recalled, come back into the engagement, I guess, really, to help his backliners. I mean, he's a big reason that Snake Pit weren't able to do much afterward. They still get two Phoenixes, even though Arkle and Zeros weren't able to be maybe the forefront of it. But on top of that, you also shred virtually everybody on Snake Pit. I mean, almost everyone goes down. Maybe not at the same time for a full deicide, but Johnny now 6-2-4 with Julio at 3-0-6. This two, as a pair, already are going to be kind of a menace on Snake Pit. But then you add in Trixtank and the control he just provided. I mean, the silences, the peels, the fact that he made it's so difficult to kill Zeros for the longest time we don't get to see it too often where that peel gets to come through for the mid laner for Belt Slap. So the fact that Trix Tank focused that much onto it was brilliant for them. And I think it just goes to show how difficult in a coordinated team fight it's going to be for SMITE to hold on here.
And Beltslap have really started to answer the call of dealing with Angry. So many of the other teams in the SCC, when they go up against SMITE specifically, it's just the mid laner. What's he going to do? And Angry's just been allowed all phase. I would even say back in towards phase 2. Angry was just allowed to sit there and free cast game after game. Nobody was ever dealing with it. But Beltslap has been one of the few teams that have come through that is really respected. Yeah, Angry likes Merlin, and Trix Tank likes ulting with Dark Pillar right into the Phoenix to start these fights out. It looks like they're only really interested in the bird into the back is Johnny. He's going to take about half his health. Airstrike forced out of Spudio. Phoenix down to a third health, but Julio finds Worst Turtle. Ultimate out of the Jormungandr's. Terror trying to find somebody. Left side Phoenix will fall, but Spudio gets Johnny all the way into the back line. And Tarum still harassing the back line. Finds the snipe out there onto Arkil. Once again, taking out another carry. But the Phoenix is down. That's all 3 birds, and now it is rough waters for Snake Pit.
Yeah, at this point, I feel like Tarum deserves a raise because he's the only reason Snake Pit are still alive, because 3 Phoenixes down, and up until about 20 seconds ago, Beltslap still had Fire Giant on a couple of members. You'd think it seems like that would be the perfect equation for a Titan to fall. But it's this Jormungandr that's going to be able to keep things going for it. And they're pushing up all these ways. So one that's going to get in there and deal some damage to the Titan. And normally I'd say, oh yeah, who cares? It's just a regular wave. It's not going to matter too much. It's a 3/4 HP, and it's not going to be healing for quite some time there for the Titan. That makes it even easier. Hey, Beltslap, 10 seconds. I can't think of many reasons not to get this Fire Giant, but they don't really need it. They could almost just run in and backdoor this Titan if they really wanted to.
They have the opportunity to do so. It's just a matter if they want to pull the trigger and go for it. Julio's going to wrap around and continue the proxy farm up. Make sure you can get those fire minions pushed as far up as possible. Blink Cataclysm in out of Dazer. Julio down to a quarter of his health out of the damage from Angry. Putting some good burst in through with the Merlin. Julio kind of had to take a damage check and go, oh, that's how much mages do late game. Okay. But luckily for him, he'll be able to come right back into the action. Fire Giant is just now respawned. It is Enhanced Fire Giant. And Snake Pit, they look like they want to defend, but at the same time, it's also seeming like they just want to back off and defend at these Phoenixes.
It's one of those things, maybe illustrated best by Devil Went Down to Georgia, but you don't want to make deals or bets against people named Johnny, and I think this is another one of those cases. 6-3-5, you were able to kill him last time around, but I don't think you defend this Fire Giant. Again, I love seeing Fire Giant steals. I love the potential it comes with. But right now, you're still trying to keep these Phoenixes alive. Right just respawned, and you got the minion wave pushed almost out enough that you can feel comfortable. Mid is about to respawn, and that minion wave is right at your tier 2. So you still have a lot of pressure mounting to kind of keep things going. And because that 3rd Phoenix isn't respawned yet, that Titan is staying at that 7,000 health mark, making it even more difficult for you to feel truly confident in your defense. 1 Phoenix already weakened, it's going to go down like it's nothing.
Dark Pillars in the back from Trix Tank, and that's the call to go. Angry barely makes it out, but he turns around and Ice Bolts into the Thorns, and that's going to be 1 kill. And Arkle manages to find Tarum. Their saving grace is gone. Worst Turtle falls, and with Dazer on full retreat, Johnny diving in the fountain. Destruction to try and continue closing the gap. Cursed Ankh is going to make sure that he pays the price for it, but that's going to be the end of the game. Beltslap taking game number 1. 35 minutes. Took him a little longer than we thought. But game number 1 of this set will go to them.
Johnny was just trying to equalize the KD a little bit. He was just trying to make it look better for him. I mean, there's not many other reasons you jump into a fountain to try and slaughter people. It's either to make yourself look really good, or yeah, we'll just say, hey, I wanted them to get another kill. It was just a pass off for them. It was good control. The minute they win that 1 fight on left at like 18 minutes, everything after that was coming up Beltslap. It was just a simple gank from Johnny turned into a fight gone wrong from Snake Pit, and after that moment, they just could not take a team fight that really felt equal for them.
It was a great start there for Snake Pit, but overall, Beltslap were able to come out on top with it. We're going to take it to a quick break. When we come back, the desk is going to break down the action from that game.
Well, there are only a couple things that are guaranteed in life. Death, taxes, Hindu Man overrating EU players, and apparently Kali winning in European SCC. Mifflin, she keeps her 100% win rate through this game, but credit deserves to go to Snake Pit here. They looked pretty good through the first 15 to 20 minutes of this game. This game was very close.
And they had some pretty solid defenses towards the end there. But I really think it comes down to how well their front line was able to control the back line on the enemy team. Snake Pit's front line falls a little bit short, whereas Julio for Belt Slap absolutely pops off at every given opportunity. He's always as deep as he possibly can be. He's either picking up kills or single-handedly doing it himself. And that's exactly what you expect to see from Amana. Go into the big baby form, hold down W, hold down left click, and just wait for the enemies to die in front of you.
And even though we were kind of lamenting the fact that it was Rom first pick and not that Kali for Johnny, I feel like Arco also had a pretty big impact on this game. A lot of very, very accurate Rom snipes in this one made it very difficult for the backline of the backline of Snake Pit rather to stay alive. 6 and 4 for Arco on that Kali, 5 and 0 for Julia on that Vamana. I misspoke earlier. Of course, Arco was playing Rom, of course. I mean, Belt Slap they belt slapped them. This is what belt slap does. They just kind of wait until 20 minutes-ish, and then they group up and they beat you that way. It's kind of been their MO all year.
And you know what? We've talked about just about everyone on Belt Slap, so I'll throw a bone Hindu Man's way. We might as well talk about the support for a split second. He does go undying. He deals a fantastic amount of damage, only 5,000 less than his mid lane counterpart, and he gets all the assists. He was finding fantastic Dharma pillars to separate these team fights. It felt like Zeros, for the most part, was allowed to kind of operate however he wanted just because Trix Tank was always there, making sure he was peeled out. And that's the last time I'll throw Hindu Man a bone. So, sorry, Trix.
Well, hopefully he enjoyed it. Yeah, that's because that's all you're getting. So quit asking, as they say. Game 2, as far as that goes, I want to see what Snake Pit's able to do. And if they're going to take that first pick slot, it feels like if you are willing to first pick that Kali and try and get yourself some of those priority picks a little bit later on in the draft, it could be a pretty good position. But the problem is against Belt Slap, they're not one god wonders. You know, Johnny's got a lot of different gods that he can play out of that jungle. So I think it's going to be a difficult task here for Snake Pit. Let's see if that rings true as picks and bans are ready for game number 2. I don't know, Miff. I just feel like first pick is in a slightly better position right now than second pick with how many strong gods are available. Do you agree?
I do, but I think it's weird to bring up now, seeing as we're seeing Rom getting first picked, we're seeing gods like Geb getting first picked on the other side. I think, in general, if we were talking about the SPL, sure, and then you can also control the bans and make sure that gods like Yamoja go your way or things along those lines. And you know what? To your favor, Snake Pit seemed like they might be trying to weasel their way into getting one of those high priority picks. Immediately throwing out a target ban inside of this tier is likely going to leave some of those meta picks available.
And this is what they did last game as well, even though they were in second pick. So they're clearly sticking to keeping Julio off of that tier pick, though. Feels kind of weird to target ban someone when they 9th picked their god. You got to ban another one of their constant selections, and he still went 5-0. And was a huge impact player. Little bit awkward, it feels like, as they go back to banning away Julio gods with that Amaterasu ban. Just, it seems difficult to keep Julio down, man. He just seems too good.
Yeah, even then, right, you already highlighted it. He took his god last overall. He's in no pressure to go ahead and take something high priority. And we would never call Vamana one of the best soul laners in the league right now. I mean, he's a good warrior. He's a very meh pick for my money. I mean, why would you take a Vamana when you could have something like Amaterasu, like Sun Wukong? Even some of these Guardians seem to outshine him over there. Even a Jormungandr might be better for backline disruption. So going ahead and continually targeting him out when you know that people like Johnny are on the enemy team who are going to first lock Kali, or people like Zeros who are going to likely look towards the Morrigan or a hyper carry along those lines, it seems like a bit of a missed opportunity to ban them out. But Snake Pit are continually going for these targeted bans. Now Rom finally getting taken off the table as well. Yamoja still available. Cthulhu, all these high priority picks. I'll be surprised to see where Snake Pit decide to go.
Cthulhu, Olorun, Yamoja, Cupid, Kali, all still available right now, and that's a lot. You only get to take one here if you're a Snake Pit. And Worst Turtle did not look particularly comfortable on that Raven. I was kind of expecting this, the Kali, in order to make sure that you get that out of Johnny's hands, give Worst Turtle something that he can feel a little bit more impactful with. And so it's going to be really put to the test here on that win rate. This is the ultimate decider, right? If the Snake Pit are able to upset Belt Slap, and this way Kali keeps her 100% win rate, she must be broken in European SEC. She has to be. That's like, this is the ultimate test for her.
Yeah, maybe it's like a client difference. Maybe some numbers got adjusted over there. Her auto attacks just hit harder in Europe. But Sobek getting taken up first overall is a fantastic counter pick straight up into Kali. Matched up with that Jingwei again, give up dual lane pressure. We already established what these picks are going to be able to do. But instead of the Gab, it is Sobek, who is going to have a much better time trying to peel off Kali from the backline. Tail whip, pluck, all these tools are going to make it that much harder for Kali to find the last hits that she needs to get the reset off of destruction or things along those lines. I just would have preferred to see Belt Slap take some gods that are actually contested at this point. I mean, Jingwei is decent, but Cupid's still available, or even Uul that we saw have some moderate success yesterday. I think, barring the Sobek, they could have taken just about anything else and still got away with having a Jingwei.
Yeah, I mean, clearly Snake Pit value the Jingwei because they top 2'd it last game, so I guess they want to take that away, but, I mean, you look at Kali Merlin, you're already hoping for a Cupid game. Like, Cupid just looks so good against those picks, particularly Merlin. EUSSC is different, man. They don't value Umoja. They don't value Cupid nearly as highly, it seems like, because he's gone unpicked and unbanned. And there's the pick that I was waiting for here for Zeros, the Morrigan. I think Zeros is the best Morrigan player in the whole world. I think that he just has the best handle on this kit. And whatever you get that going on your side, that is really scary because Morrigan is really, really nuts in the right hands.
But she's going to have a hard counter matchup on the other side. If Kali ever makes contact with this Morrigan, the dot damage from her second ability means that there's really going to be no opportunity to go into the stealth. It really comes down to, once this late game team fight phase arises, I'm imagining we're going to see Morrigan operating as a solo agent, as will Kali, meaning that whoever sees the other one first should just straight up win the engagement. If Morrigan hits Kali first, the first ability into the second, likely with a Polynomicon proc as well, should be able to kill her just about instantly if the Kali doesn't have beads. If Kali sees Morrigan first, that's just all she wrote. The 3 into the 2 for the dot damage, no stealth escape, hasten katana to chase it down. But I think Belt Slap, with Morrigan in mid operating as an assassin come late game, is likely going to look for some sort of jungler that can operate as a frontliner, maybe even an Erlang Shen.
I like the ban right away from the Snake Pit because I think they're thinking in terms of not only what do Belt Slap need, but what is going to be a good transformation option for the Morrigan. Robin's a great transformation option. Take him off the board. The Guan Yu pick is a bit surprising to me. That is not what I expect when I think of what Julio is going to play here. Wukong's still available and is a much, much better transformation than something like Guan Yu. I think a Wukong ban there would have been much better.
I mean, Wukong is so undervalued, and you called it, man. Gets locked in instantly. Banning out that Guan Yu almost single-handedly forces Julio into taking a straight-up better character, but Wukong is still a flex pick. We've seen it in the jungle a couple times. I'm not sure that we've seen Johnny in particular piloting that god, but it still can operate just as that. Keep them on their toes. Maybe it is a Sun Wukong jungle, and that would operate, as I said earlier, as one of those frontline junglers that make up for the fact that you've already got an assassin essentially built into your comp with Morrigan.
Yeah, Johnny gets to wait and see, play nice and patiently here to see exactly what everyone's going to take as Ho Yi comes through as the hunter of choice this time. Not a god that we see that much of these days, Miff. What do you think about Ho Yi?
He's got decent fight potential. I'd say he's, again, one of those middle-of-the-pack hunters that you would expect, but instead of being a middle-of-the-pack hunter focused on survivability, like Hachiman with the CC immunity in the ultimate and the ability to escape out of these sticky situations, Ho Yi's got a very high top end in that if he pulls ahead, he gets to play incredibly aggressively. He can find those double bounces. The ultimate's going to be a very good tool to separate these team fights, and just the second ability, the Mark of the Golden Crow, is going to be a good way to keep track of zeros if he decides to try and stealth through these team fights.
It's a good point. I like that counter pick option for him, but at the same time, it opens up the Snake Pit for a fantastic, a devastating 10th Daji. Kali, Merlin, Fafnir, Ho Yi, 4 characters that have no innate CC immunity. Fafnir, you can transform, but if you get your transformation forced, what are you going to do? De-transform right away? Just get no value out of the ultimate and stand still for that long? I love this Daji pick for Johnny. I think it's backbreaking.
I think this Daji pick is going to be absolutely huge for these team fights. And even then, barring the ultimate, he's got a decent matchup into Merlin. That flicker's not going to be enough of an escape. He could just 2-win to chase it down, or use the 3, use the 1-shot him, blink in. Whatever you got to do, Merlin doesn't really have any tools to separate himself from this Daji. Ho Yi's going to have a very hard time in that matchup as well if his stun is down. I think this Daji pick, as you highlighted, is going to be very, very strong. But it's still, they're lacking a little bit in terms of frontline. I think Sobek and Sun Wukong have to pull a lot of weight for the Belt Slap squad.
Well, if one Daji is good, 2 Dajis must be really good. We'll see how good they turn out to be here. In game number 2, let's throw it down to the casters.
Thank you, Aggro and Mifflin. Yeah, when it got to 10th pick Daji, immediately my eyes were like, oh yeah, this is Johnny. He does have a Daji, and what a comp to pick this into, bro. I mean, like they highlighted, Ho Yi, Kali, and Merlin specifically, yes, you have the Fafnir transformation, but all three of their carries have no way of getting out of there without purification beads.
It's going to make things, well, a lot more interesting over there, whether they're in the dual lane or, I think more often than not, we'll see Johnny taking some of that pressure into the mid lane, get Zeros ahead and himself ahead at the same time. That's going to be an easy choice for them. But you can already see, I mean, Worst Turtle, Angry, and Spudio all forced into beads. And while Angry and Spudio might have already been getting it, seeing Worst Turtle pick him up, much like we had to see Johnny pick him up last time, does enable some more aggression here from Belt Slap. It really does come down to the same conversation, I think, in maybe placement as last game, which is that Belt Slap, with this draft, in my mind, should be able to help cultivate themselves an early lead. Worst Turtle's not going to be able to fight as much as Johnny, so I think he's going to fall behind. Jormungandr, as much as he might be able to bring a lot to the fight, and Tarum had a really good last game, at the same time, he also just doesn't lose lane, which is another great reason to have him over there. So for the most part, you're just going to maintain if you're Snakebit, but I think Belt Slap can get a lead, and I just don't know if they're going to lose it the same way Snakebit lost theirs.
Oh, Dazer's going to get thrown back. Luckily, he has the minion wave, the bounce. Not going to be enough to drop him down, so it's just a little bit, or enough to keep him from going down onto that one. The Trix Tank half. Dazer even lower. Another good hammer out of Dazer. Will keep Trix Tank at bay, but that level 2 pluck, so devastating, especially when you don't have your second level yet on that Fafnir. All you have is your hammer. Luckily, Prox at level 2, so he has that leap available in case he gets yanked back one more time. But I think the big talking point here is Zero's got Morrigan on a chance in a region where Morrigan is banned almost 100% of games, and somehow she's been untouched like the entire weekend. And now Zeros just gets to grab her as Dazer again gets grabbed, but leaps right back.
Yeah, it's a pick in this Morrigan that if you're playing Belt Slap and you don't ban it, Zeros is going to lock it in. He's going to devastate you with it, and he's going to remind you why you ban Morrigan all the time. And, you know, they had mentioned the fact that, yeah, having 2 Dajis is pretty nice. It almost sounded like a new Dr. Seuss book, right? 1 Daji good, 2 Dajis better. But, you know, you also have this ability to become Dazer. You can turn over into a Fafnir and maybe enable your team. You can become Worst Turtle if this Kali starts having a good game. You can become Spudio. You can become Angry. Like, there's so many options for you in this game that I think are all viable for a Morrigan. Johnny is probably, just from history, going to be the one that gets ahead and therefore maybe one of the best targets for Zeros. And that's just been their MO. I can't count how many times I've seen Belt Slap, you know, do this combination where Johnny just gets immense on a jungler, and now you have to deal with 2 of them because Zeros can play them just as well as Johnny will be able to in a team fight.
Now, Belt Slap have not lost very many individual games this entire year so far. I think they've had 1 set loss and I think 2 or 3 individual game losses the entire season. That's a huge testament to how strong Belt Slap is, but anytime Zeros has gotten Morrigan, they have not lost. It's kind of the situation we're in with this Kali, where Kali's been undefeated all weekend long. Zeros is undefeated on the Morrigan, and nobody should be giving Belt Slap, the #1 team in probably all of the SOC, NA included, his best guy.
Yeah, this is one of those teams, you know, Aggro even said it earlier, if you look at Belt Slap, they're a team that could very easily compete in the SPL, and I think could take a lot of the teams we see, maybe even the bottom 4 in their entirety. I think they could put up a good fight against. And so this is going to be a dangerous game for Snakebit as a whole to maintain. But I mean, it is the argument of win rates. Angry's on a god that he is usually historically good on. Worst Turtle has the 100% win rate. Tarum, unfortunately, just lost that 100% win rate for that Jormungandr in that last game. But the numbers still give them, maybe some sort of advantage.
I mean, but credit to where it's due. Tarum played out of his mind, especially in those last couple of team fights in the last game. So it's not like, this Jormungandr did nothing for him and that's why they lost into him. I mean, he was lights out in the last one. Dazer, once again, the target of the pluck, just trying to find a way out, managed to leap over that persistent gust, but a blink for blink out of supports. Does he have the speed to get away from the Croc? Just misses that second pluck. Trixtank, his first one that he's missed this game. And unfortunately for them, they'll result in 0 kills for Belt Slap.
And I think that's just good pathing from Dazer more than it is Trixtank missing. I think there's not a lot of angles from where Trixtank pops out of that ult, is able to get that pluck without getting into the tier 2, so I think Dazer just took a path that made things as awkward as possible for Trixtank to try and make that work. And so he's going to be able to at least control that little bit of a flow. And once again, we're starting to see, albeit a very small one, but a lead picked up for SMITE in terms of farm. They're doing a little bit better all across the board than what we're seeing out of Belt Slap. And again, varying from wave to wave, and almost as immediately as I say that, it ends up going in favor of Belt Slap. But this 100 gold that's fluctuating between the two, I think SMITE has shown that they can grow that into, 1,000, 2,000 gold without Belt Slap answering back.
Johnny potentially looking for Tarum on this right-hand side. Might still look for him as he hasn't gone back. He's walking back into the midst of it. Will the bleed be enough is the question, and it doesn't look like it will be. So Tarum losing out on that World Serpent, but will make it out alive, the more important aspect for him. But now he's lost that safety. Arkil loses his safety by having to use the airstrike. Force Turtle trying to go to his back camp, but Trixtank being the bigger bully and not letting him walk back for that farm, so he'll go to Johnny instead.
I think that's what we're going to see more of throughout this, especially in the early game. Kill potential exists really through Johnny and Zeros. I think Arkle's going to just kind of relax over in the duo lane, and that's we see just a massive gank. For the most part, it is your jungler and mid laner that are going to be the driving force. Kali is not going to be the one that's really popping off this early, or at least every time we say that, we haven't seen it so far. On these teams, earlier the Poppies were able to do so, but Arkle in trouble.
Yeah, with no airstrike available to him and using that persistent gust on the wave, that is a free kill if they've ever seen it. Going over into the duo lane, so Spudio with first blood on the board for SMITE. Once again, they get the first blood over towards that duo lane side. Getting it onto the Jing Wei is not the worst case for Belt Slap. It is a Jing Wei. She's really just playing the farm game for the majority of the time that the early game goes through. Where Hurdle will be able to get his back camps this time around and meet up with Tarum to go for the blue, get that experience online for him.
Yeah, I look at kills in the duo lane as how much time are you getting farm that they're not getting farm. And to a certain extent, if they're dead 4, 5, 6 times, you're going to get massive compared to them. I mean, you should have 5, 6 levels on them. But 1 kill over there, first blood bounty's nice, but it's not going to be the end-all be-all.
Zeros has to use his beads as he's under pressure by Dazer and Worst Turtle, who are diving in aggressively towards that tier 1 tower, but getting the beads was all that they needed. Now they have that safety net away from Zeros, and as they mentioned on the desk, 1 hit from Worst Turtle is all it's going to take to put Zeros in a rocky spot. Spudio's going to take quite a bit of damage to the airstrike and the lurking in the waters, and a teleport in with the Trickster Spirit out of Johnny. Still has that Pala available if he needs to, and he's going to go up into it, looking for anybody to pull in. He'll be able to straight out 1 before Johnny takes down Worst Turtle, and still Dazer here trying to live as long as he can. Might be able to, but no, triple kill for Johnny, and that's how Belt Slap gets the ball rolling.
I would trade Arkle twice for a triple kill on Johnny any day. I think no matter what, especially in the current meta, where Arkle's going to get his items online and join the fight in the same state no matter how many deaths he has, you want 3 kills on Johnny. Now he's got a good lead over Worst Turtle, and he showcased exactly what they were talking about the desk, why they described it as backbreaking. You get destruction out of Worst Turtle. You get Dazer forced to use his transformation just to make sure he doesn't get pulled and knocked down. And unfortunately, there's only so much you can do to try and to escape this Daji. They just don't have it. Without the CC immune ults, or any CC immunity, those beads are maybe your best bet, but Johnny just melted them faster than they could really reply.
And honestly, I'm surprised Dazer didn't go for purification beads. He went for a very selfish and very aggressive blink for his first relic. It's a little question to me. I feel like a shell, even at the very worst, would have been a better pickup for him. But instead, he's going for all this extra mobility and extra aggression, but he doesn't really have the leg to stand on to do it.
It's surprising to see him go something aggressive. 'Cause I didn't even notice the blink down there. And in a comp where I don't feel like he's going to be able to get aggressive until post-level 12. You know, it's one of those things that he has it now, but, I mean, who's going to follow up on his blink? Angry gets a little bit better as time goes on, especially with the build. I mean, he's got Rada Tahuti, so that might be good damage, but I just don't know if Worst Turtle at this point is online enough. I don't know if there's any follow-up, really, for Dazer's blink. And so all the setup that he could bring, maybe something that could have waited until level 12, and he could have either been a little more selfish and gone for the beads to make sure he stays alive early on, or something like you said, a shell that could potentially, especially upgraded, help save some lives.
Yeah, it just feels so out of place for really a Fafnir of all gods to pick up Blink. You don't traditionally see that relic onto him, especially into a comp like this. I mean, when there's 2 potential Powwows out of a Dodgy, when there's 2 Sobeks, potentially, even if you decide to transform into Trickstank. And I mean, even just Trickstank on a Sobek in general and Johnny being on this Dodgy. To me, as a support, I'm saying, guys, we're going to have to play it safe for the first 12 levels because I need beads to get away from this composition. I mean, that's just what you have to communicate to them. Play a little bit safer, but then again, you're kind of playing it safe to allow Johnny to free farm, so you're kind of in that catch-22.
Yeah, this is... I feel, yeah, like a Catch-22 is the perfect example, right? Because you want Worst Turtle to sit back and farm. Honestly, you need Spudio Angry in the same spot. The later the game goes on, I think the better their comp is. Johnny doesn't need to farm, but he's more than happy to, especially now that he's got that triple kill under his belt. More items is always nice for him. But Zeros, I think even more frightening. Allowed to just sit back, farm so far, hasn't necessarily had no impact on the game, but hadn't had any of the flashy moments you expect to see just yet. That ult online, well, it's going to open those opportunities. Imagine one Powwow comes through and burns, well, the 3 beads that are there for Snakebit. And then the second Powwow comes through, and that's when you realize the first one was Zeros, who had transformed. Now he's invis in your backline while Johnny's chasing you down the good old-fashioned way. I think team fights, when Belt Slap do start grouping up here in the next few minutes, they're going to be devastating for Snakebit.
It's already a little bit dangerous for them having to deal with the double Powwow when they have their purification beads up, but like you said, when you get that double transformation, I mean, how are they going to be able to handle it at that point? Especially if Dazer uses his ultimate just to cleanse out the first one. Well, now you yank the dragon back in with the second one, and now he really has no way of getting out of these fights. Johnny's at level 12, and that's going to get him his purification beads for his second relic. Julio still hasn't gone back to base yet to pick up his. Not sure if he'll go for a more aggressive option with a blink of his own, or if he'll go for something a little bit tankier option with something like a Shield of Thorns, maybe a Shell. Gold Fury started up by Belt Slap, down to about half health. Worst Turtle being chased out by Julio on the backside. Dazer is stuck in the middle of 4 of them. He's forced to leap away, and up into the Nimbus Cloud is Julio as he waits to regenerate a little bit of HP and let the clone soak up the damage on the bottom side. Terra up to the World Serpent, looking for anything that he can find, and that'll separate the Belt Slap team. Now they're spread all across the fight and across the map. Transformation immediately into a Wukong of its own, but Zeros has to Aegis, and it's not going to be enough to save him from the Blizzard out of Angry. Up into the Powwow goes Johnny, finds Angry, looking for any other targets he can, but beads out of the Hunter. I mean, that Spudio doesn't get picked up, but he'll still be taken down by one more basic. It's a 2-for-3 trade in favor of Snake Pit, and Julio on full retreat from this Wukong. No ult available, and Arkil is on the way back, but it's not going to be enough to save the solo laner as Dazer breathes the fire onto him for a 4-man sweep for Snake Pit.
That was fantastically played, and who's the highlight player in my mind? Once again, Terram is the one that's really driving factor for Snake Pit. Without that ult coming down, that World Serpent, they don't separate as much on Belt Slap. You get Julio and Johnny that were very distinctly in a separate fight from the rest of the squad. I don't know, Zeros, I didn't see him get his ult off as Wukong as well. And so there's little moments like that where you're wondering if maybe there's some healing that could have been done mid-fight, you know, maybe something else, or maybe even just a different transformation that could have been a little more beneficial overall. But either way, I think Snake Pit just makes sure that Belt Slap are in the worst position to try and make those decisions, right? I mean, you're already in a separated fight. What do you need? Tankiness, kill potential, where is it all going? I think good on Johnny to be able to pull all of them back, but I mean, he's 5-1. That's a great slash line, but when you're 100% of your team's kills, nobody else is really having the big impact that you need. So this is where I'd like to start seeing it get a little diversified for Belt Slap. Someone else picking up some of these kills, maybe getting aggressive, being the leading force, would be better, because then it's not as easy to just all in on one guy and end Belt Slap as a whole.
Julio just off the mark with that cudgel, just a hair shy being able to tag Terra and keep him from going back to base. But in that last fight, like you mentioned, Zero's transformed into the Sun Wukong. We didn't see an ultimate. There was no value gained from that ultimate at all. It transformed instantly into a stun. As soon as he got to move again, here's another stun. I believe one was by the stun out of Spudio, and then the second one had come through from Dazer, or one from Wursturtle and Dazer. But two stuns forced an Aegis immediately out of Zeros, and I mean, he's already so deep in the Suns and the Blizzard out of the two carries that he has nowhere to go. I feel that maybe it was a misclick and he was trying to go to Daji, went a little too far over to the left or the right and hit the Wukong instead, but a rare misplay that you see out of Zeros in that last fight.
Ultimately, leading the Snake Pit, again, kind of being the driving force in the game. They've got the gold lead. They've got themselves a pretty, again, you know, when I say diversification of kills, you can't do it much better than what they've done. Everybody has one, except for Dazer, who has two. And so you've been able to pull things mostly in your favor. And farm, in terms of XP, has been going pretty equal between the two teams. So that item difference, that little bit of gold, is going to be the one thing that can help set you truly apart. So if I'm Belt Slap, I'm looking at my decision-making in the last team fight. Getting separated that much, definitely, I mean, everything fell apart from that point forward. Now we're starting to hit the point. Last game, it was around this time that Belt Slap took a fight and just ran away with it. And I think there's same, you know, capabilities are there for either of these squads. One good team fight here snowballs into a Fury, snowballs into potentially a Fire Giant if you're able to get that big of a win, and that changes everything.
Oh, looking for the Gold Fury, a blink over from Dazos. He's going to try and get in there, but Belt Slap will be able to secure that Gold Fury. And try and make their way out of blinking from Wursturtle, leaps into the back, trying to go into Arkil, but Arkil just trying to live as long as he can. Wursturtle is going to get the reset. He's going to get yanked into the powwow and dropped by Zeros. Leap from Dazer is going to get the stun onto one, trying to get out, but Johnny has no route and no way out. Angry picks him up with a Frostbolt, and that'll be a 1-for-2 trade. Another team fight goes in favor of Snake Pit.
And they should be able to start up Pyromancer, but I don't think Fire Giant is something that you could realistically pull here. It's just too dangerous, especially Zeros still having his ult, potentially able to become someone like Johnny. So an iffy team fight, but still one you could try to pull back in your favor. It just seems like Belt Slap are trying to slow down Snake Pit more than anything.
It's a very risky Pyromancer with Zero still available. They're still jumping onto it, down to a quarter. Terran will spot him out, and that'll be enough for Snake Pit to be able to guarantee one. Gonna be able to get out for the moment his tricks, but he gets caught by the stun on the back end, and Dazer with another Frostbolt will pick him up. Julio just has to turn tail and run in the Ox transformation. It's not gonna set up for Fire Giant anytime soon, but Pyromancer will go the way of Snake Pit, starting to build a little bit and try and keep that little bit of a lead for themselves. So they're only up 900, looking for another 500 gold with this tier 1 tower. Arkil and Julio will not be enough to stop them from taking it down. Another 500 gold in the pockets of the Snake Pit.
And they're using their pressure perfectly right now. I mean, being able to turn that fight around the Fury, even though they lose the Fury, into a Pyromancer, now to a tier 1. I mean, I think everything that they could have asked for in that, they were able to grab up. Belt Slap maintain themselves just close enough because of that Gold Fury that they're not falling too far behind and things aren't drastically out of their hands just yet. But these fights, I mean, Arkil has been very easy to pick off. Trix Tank hasn't been able to quite find either Plux or Peel for his team. Unfortunately for Johnny, that time he went in, helped get one kill, and then immediately was chased down by all of Snake Pit. And so I'm still looking towards Zeros, I'm looking towards Julio as well to make this Wukong pick look incredible and to show us what I know this Morgan is capable of. And we're starting to hit that point. I mean, 20 minutes in, this is where I expect to see more Worst Turtle popping up on the kill feed, but also where I start to expect, to see Zeros maybe be a more impactful player for Belt Slap going forward.
Dazer's been nailing so many of these hammers, and I really feel that's been such a huge turning point for Snake Pit in a lot of these fights. Obviously, yes, you got to be able to hit abilities, but Fafnir's hammer, one of the most important abilities in his kit to hit, just that long-range single-target stun, and with how consistent he's been throughout the game, it's been such a huge buffer for Snake Pit. And it's going to take a little bit of poke from Julio and Trick's tank, and a little, basically minuscule. He'll get to heal a little bit of it back up with that coerce buff. But these hammers have been so important for Snake Pit in these last couple of fights specifically.
Yeah, and I think that's, again, just something that if you're Belt Slap right now, you're trying to figure out how to make this transition work out. Last time, there was a fight around the Fury where, well, no, not even the Fury, it was the left lane where everything turned around in Game 1. That Fury going your way is a big thing. I think in a minute 20, we're going to see another big fight that's going to potentially turn things over, although Johnny seems to want to accelerate some of this in terms of finding a kill now.
He's going to do everything he can to commit to it, but Shell is too good, as well as a Soul Gem proc out of Angry will give him enough health and shield to live through it. Johnny unable to pick up the kill onto the carries. The Snake Pit come out with another kill on the board, and another hammer gets the beads out of Arkill. Draconic transformation of Dazer, looking for something. Zero's just going to throw the clone all the way into the back just to leave it sitting there, but a huge saving play there out of Angry, out of the support for Snake Pit.
Picks and bans wise, Snake Pit should have been the team and still feel like the team that should be losing. Belt Slap, though, maybe getting too aggressive with a lot of their plays. This is going to be a big one around this Fire Giant.
Snake Pit are going to try and sneak this Fire Giant out from under them.
No way!
But Belt Slap steals the Fire Giant. Tarum is going to fall. Doesn't have that World Serpent to save himself this time. Zeros catches Worst Turtle into the back. Transformation into the Wukong. He's going to get stunned out by Spudio, but he still has plenty of damage and plenty of tankiness to keep taking down this carry. Waiting for the dive bomb to come out. He'll go the opposite way. A slam down on top, and Julio will finish the job. 3 kills and an FG steal out of Belt Slap have just turned this game around.
All from a Jingwei basic. Now they've got this sustain as well as the damage necessary to start burning through these towers. 5 towers, though, still up right now, J-Mac. They're chasing into Phoenixes. I don't know if Johnny got the memo. There's still a Tier 1 and a Tier 2 to burn through. He's burning beads, so at least they're keeping the pressure going. This is great from Belt Slap. And again, all around one play that turns it in their favor. I was waiting for something to happen big for them. It's been feeling like all of these fights have been missing. Something has just not gone right for Belt Slap, or maybe too many things have just been going right for Snake Pit. And that one, things just happen to be off on one moment, one lapse, where Snake Pit fall apart. And now Belt Slap are once again in control of the game.
It was a really early Sunbreaker call out of the... Spudio dropped Suns when Fire Giant was still at like 60-70% health. Usually you save that for the final shred, and once you drop those Suns, that's kind of your all-in commit at that point. And Snake Pit, unfortunately, they kind of get bit back for it, and they end up losing 3, losing the Fire Giant, and now they have to fight into a team they were leading this entire game. Now Belt Slap have a 5,000 gold lead out of nowhere.
They come through, they get a Tier 1, a Tier 2, a lot of kills, a Fire Giant. Things are going up red this time around for the Chaos side. Now with an Oni Fury looking to maybe even make things come up even more red on their side. Give the pressure they've already been able to mount up and apply it by 3 across all of the lanes. And I like where they're going right now. Get rid of this Tier 1. It shouldn't even exist. Don't even count it. It doesn't exist. They're looking for the Tier 2 and left already. It's just going to be a couple of hits before they can actually start this one up. And Trickstank is already going in for the zone.
Well, Johnny's going up for the Pal-Lao. He wants Angry because he doesn't have his beads from the last fight. Gonna yank him back down in World Serpent. will create a little bit of zone, but not enough as Arkle finds the final shot necessary to take down the mid laner. Spudio down to half, Julio chasing him out, and the basics just aren't enough to save his life. Coerce buff might be enough to help him, but little news to know that Tricksnake is waiting in the back line, but he's not able to get the last hit. Julio will find it with the Master's Will, but Terran finds one, Arkle grabs Dazer, and it's just Worst Turtle left to defend against the 4 strong of Belt Slap, but Worst Turtle is all the way on the other side of the map. What was he doing all the way at the Phoenix trying to defend there? There's 5 pushing in. Now there's a Titan down to half health. Only Julio's up here waiting for the minions just to get the backdoor protections, and unless Worst Turtle can pull an absolute miracle out of his butt here, it looks like the Belt Slap is going to take the 2-0 victory and send Snake Pit down to the loser's bracket.
Now, look at all the damage that happened there at the end for Macaulay, and now imagine that happening at the Phoenix with this team. And maybe a different story to be had. I'm interested in that call. You look up, and it seems like he's split pushing, gets about half of a Phoenix before he's forced to back. But that's not the time, at least in my eyes, to be doing so. Snake Pit, they might have lost that Fire Giant. They might have lost some of those ensuing fights, but I don't think they needed to lose the game right there. They definitely could have pushed it a little further, but unfortunately for them, that call, that separation ends up costing them everything, at least the set here, and now they're going to be knocked down to the lower bracket.
Oh, and with that, the 2-0 for Belt Slap, they move on with a 1-game advantage going into the finals, and they sent Snake Pit back down to face off again against the Poppies. Before that, Desk is going to break down the results of this final game.
Thank you, J-Mac and Gore. Indeed, Aggro and Mifflin here on the desk as, well, Belt Slap do what Belt Slap usually do. They win 2-0 over their opponents. Mifflin, today it was Snake Pit. Tomorrow we'll see if it's going to be Snake Pit again, trying to get their revenge, but the Kali 100% win rate did not end up saving and being the leading factor there for Snake Pit.
Yeah, just absolutely tarnished. But unfortunately for Snake Pit, or maybe fortunately, they are falling down to loser bracket. It's not all doom and gloom. I think any team fight that you take in the late game where your Kali decides to be not there is a bad call. Why are you getting to this point in the game and not using your absolute best resource? It's just a big question mark to me, and it's a huge misplay, a large throw, and as Gore said, Snake Pit didn't really need to lose right there. It was just a bad decision.
Yeah, it wasn't a good one for Worst Turtle for sure. I can agree with that. But again, this game was close for Snake Pit. Again, 15, 20 minutes in, this game was really, really close yet again. So it's clear that they aren't getting blown out of the water, but it just feels inevitable that Belt Slap is going to come back and get those victories. That Ricochet was nuts, by the way, by Spudio. But even though these games are close, it never feels like Belt Slap is out of control. It just feels like they have Snake Pit right where they want them. As soon as they start grouping up and doing 5-on-5s, the game ends quickly.
I agree, man. I agree with you completely in that it didn't seem like Belt Slap was 100% driving the game the whole time, but I never thought for a second that they weren't going to win because they always have that air about them. It's always, okay, well, sure, Snake Pit got a pick here, but Julio hasn't rotated out, or sure, Snake Pit won this one team fight, but Zeros wasn't there. And it seems like once they do group up as 5, they really start to Voltron together. It starts to work out completely well. And all these counter picks that Snake Pit had to deal with Zeros never really mattered because it wasn't Zeros driving the bus. It was 100% behind Arkle, Julio with that front line, Johnny finishing up a lot of those kills, and Zeros was just there to kind of absorb the attention of Kali, to make sure that Spudio couldn't feel safe playing in these team fights. He was just more of a threat than he was actually the thing killing you.
With that, Snake Pit fall down into the lower bracket, as you mentioned, and Belt Slap await the winner of the loser's half. Snake Pit versus Poppies, that will be our first game tomorrow starting at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. You can catch that one and see who has the opportunity to unseat Belt Slap. Now, that is going to be a best of 5 in the finals, and Belt Slap do go in with a 1-game advantage, so it would be all the more impressive if one of those two teams did end up with the upset. Europe now in the books. We move on to North America. Hype Unit and Froggy going to be our first matchup there, and that's going to be on that lower half. So high stakes to kick us off in our first NA match here, Miff.
Man, there's so many storied players that might just get fully eliminated here. We got players like Layers, who's had a little bit of SPL experience, an SCC world champion, Ben EQ, who's been around the scene for a long time, and on the side of Froggy, you've got players like Jinku Bang, formerly known as Mexiety, who's been around the scene for as long as the scene has existed. Day to remember, one of the best ADCs in the SEC/SOC for my money. It's crazy to think that these are the guys who are competing just for their tournament life.
Should be a fun one to watch, so stay tuned. We'll be right back with North America here at the SEC Playoffs.